Once you've got a handle on beans, blobs, hourglasses, and rectangles, it's time to start having some fun by playing mix and match with our proportions. So let me just explain what that means. You remember our friend Quattro here, and if we look at his overall height, we can see that his head in this particular case is probably about 2/3 of the total height. So if this is 3/3 altogether, 3 out of 3, his head is 2/3 and his legs and body make up 1/3. You can see in this one on the left-hand side, things are a little bit different. His head's probably about 50% of his total height, and his body is about 1/4, and his legs about 1/4. So you can see that Quattro is quite variable. So we're not too concerned with the change in size of his mouth. What we're concerned about is heads versus overall height, and then how you split the rest of the height between the body and the legs. So let's go and take a look at what we can do. Here we have Mr. Rectangle, who is based on Quattro, and what we can do is start to monkey around with his proportions. Let's start to play and make his head a whole lot bigger. So we'll make his head bigger. Let's make his body kind of small. So we'll say this can be his part of his body. And then we'll make his legs relatively long compared to his body. So here we go with the head. Let's make his eyes in like this. We'll give him his hair back. And body's going to be here, so we're going to give him a pretty tiny body like this. And then remember that his arm goes off like this. And he's saying, "Come along, come along." Now, the thing we've got to remember is that his arm actually can't be too long because his arms have to not go too much below his waist. So we'll have to deal with that in a minute. But let's go for legs in the meantime. So we'll give him quite long legs. And there we've changed him up, and he's suddenly a whole lot more interesting, as you can see. Much more interesting to have this mix of half his height going to the head, and then probably slightly less than 1/4 or so to his torso, and a certain amount to his legs. So what are our other options? We could also give him a really tiny head, and then a big body, like this. And what are we going to do with his legs? We don't want tiny and tiny, but we could do something like this. This is probably not particularly interesting because tiny body and tiny legs is not anything much to shout about, but it's possible this could work. So it's a variation on these proportions, and this is a variation on those proportions. What else could we do? We could give him a really long body. So let's make him a long, skinny body like this, and head like that. And let's give him tiny little legs like this. Kind of looks like a running pencil, doesn't he? Oops, like that. And like that. And like that. And like that. So you can see from starting with the purple Mr. Rectangle in the top right-hand corner, we've come up with 3 quite different options from the same shapes, just scaling them up and down for different proportional sizes of head, body, and legs. Now we can do exactly the same thing with Mr. Blob, Ms. Blob. If we were to go for a big head and a similar size body, and then the arm. What should we do with the legs? Shall we make the legs really tiny? Shall we make the legs really long? I say let's make the legs long. There we go. So there we've got big head, similar size body, and that gives us an option. But that's quite dull. Having two body parts about the same is always pretty dull. So let's go for a big head. Big heads always look cartoony. They can also look quite cute depending on how big you make the eyes. And if we make a tiny body here, like a little blobby body, and then we're going to give a hand and another hand like this, and funny little legs at the bottom. There. That gives us a strange little character. He looks almost like he's got an onion for his head. So you can see there's a lot that you can do just playing around, messing with proportions. Okay, so here we go with the bean. Let us go for a massive head on a medium kind of bean. So let's go for a bean like this. We're going to put quite small legs on here. There we go. Our first bean variation. Or we could put a massive bean body. Let's put it in here. Relatively massive. A massive bean body like this. Littleish circle, bigger circle, and a teeny head on top. This is probably going to look pretty odd, to be honest. It might end up looking like a caterpillar or something. But you never know till you try, so it's always worth a try. And then, again, let's put tiny little legs. So, reasonable sized bean body, small head, little legs. That can actually work, because quite often you do get quite bulky looking. You might get a man who's got a bulky body but quite a small head on top, and he would look quite comical. So this could work, and it's always worth experimenting. You can never make a mistake. You can just find something that you might not do again, or you find something that you think, this could work with a tweak. The final bean, let's do a bean. We haven't really got room, but let's do a bean with really long legs. Like this. And a medium-sized head. Not too big, not too small. There we go. And there's our bean with very big legs, very long legs. They can be long and skinny. And we've got a different character. So that is how you mess with the proportions of your beans, blobs, rectangles, and of course you can carry it through to your hourglass as well. And this is how you start to fiddle and play and come up with characters.